Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Voda, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Theodore was hurrying to the morning work meeting.
Today is the day, he was saying. Today, I will be chosen to be the tug in charge.
Being the tug in charge meant that you got to pull ships from up in front, just like Emily. You led the way and gave orders. It was one of the most important jobs to have in the whole harbor. Now, Theodore was just passing Bedford Buoy, so he decided to practice asking the dispatcher if he could be the tug in charge.
Pardon me, Mr. Dispatcher, sir, but I was just wondering. No. I was thinking. No. I would like to be. Yes, that's better. Pardon me, Mr. Dispatcher, but today I would like to be the tug in charge. I would like to be the tug in charge today, Mr. Dispatcher.
Huh. Guess that's one way to practice asking the dispatcher. Perhaps you wouldn't mind helping there, Bedford? Of course not. You don't even talk. And remember how I said way back in Theodore's whistle how the whole tug in charge thing kind of felt rushed? Well, I think this episode actually might be the start of that. So later at the morning work meeting, the dispatcher says he needs a tug to bring in a ship later. Of course. Who volunteers for the job?
George, said the dispatcher. Ah, yes, George, you will...
Excuse me.
interrupted Theodore. Yes, Theodore, said the dispatcher. What is it? Theodore swallowed the big lump in his throat.
Pardon me, Mr. Thinking, but I was just dispatching...
began Theodore.
I mean, excuse me, Mr. Tug in Charge, but today I would like to be the dispatcher.
Today you would like to be me? Said the dispatcher, who was most surprised.
No,
said Theodore.
I would like to be... I was wondering if I mean, do you think I could be the tug in charge?
There, he had said it. Okay, Theodore, said the dispatcher.
Oh, that's okay.
Sighed Theodore, putting on a brave face.
Maybe some other time.
Theodore, called Hank.
The dispatcher said you could be the tug in charge.
He could, said Theodore.
I mean, I did. I mean, I am.
Well, that went... well. The dispatcher's eyes must be rolling in his head. 'Cause mine sure are. So after the position being filled, Theodore then makes his way to the harbor entrance, where he then spots a funny-looking object floating in the water.
It looked like a giant, funny-shaped oil drum. Could this be what the dispatcher wanted me to bring in? Wondered Theodore. Theodore turned back to the strange-looking thing bobbing in the water.
I'm the tug in charge
Of an old oil drum, he said. This wasn't quite what he had in mind. Theodore decided not to even use his tow rope.
I'll just push it in.
He said to himself glumly. Theodore gave a gentle push. The thing wouldn't budge. Now, that's funny, Theodore thought to himself. It's just a little thing floating in the water. I should be able to push it. Theodore turned his engine up and gave his mightiest shove. Well, the thing turned a little, like a slippery bar of soap, and Theodore went sliding right past it. There's something funny here, thought Theodore. That little thing is heavier than it looks. Theodore kept wondering about the strange floating thing. There was just no place to tie his tow rope. And that's when Theodore began to worry. Maybe I can't bring it in, he thought to himself.
No! 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 We do not give up in this harbor! But how strange. Haven't we seen this familiar shape before? We're about to have our answer soon. More than eager to bring this thing in, Theodore then ties his tow rope and begins making his way into the harbor.
Theodore made his way into the big harbor with the strange thing. It was slow going, because as small as the thing was, it was still tough tugging. Theodore gave another blast with his whistle, just to let the others know the tug in charge was coming. When suddenly, the weirdest, wildest, most awful thing began to happen. The water around Theodore began swirling and whirling, like someone had pulled a plug in a giant bathtub. Only the water wasn't going down. It was something coming up right under Theodore. And it was pushing Theodore up right along with it. "Whoa!" shouted Theodore. "The harbor is moving. I mean, I'm moving. Or something is moving. Whoa!" Then Theodore realized the strange thing was rising up out of the water, and it seemed there was a lot more of it than met the eye. In fact, it wasn't an oil drum at all, far from it. It was actually a submarine, Northumberland submarine. Now everyone in the harbor was staring at Theodore. "What are you doing up there, Theodore?" said Northumberland. "Well, what are you doing down there?" said Theodore. Now, if you don't know, Northumberland is a very sleepy submarine. He had been heading into his dock after a long ocean voyage under the water when he had fallen fast asleep. Theodore's whistle blast finally woke him up, and he decided to rise to the surface to see what was going on. "Theodore," said the dispatcher, "what is the meaning of this? What are you doing on top of that submarine?" I was just bringing him in, sir," replied Theodore. "It looks," smiled George, "like he's bringing you in." The others smiled too. It was a very unusual place for a tugboat to be. But the dispatcher frowned. "Theodore, that is not the ship I wanted brought in." Theodore felt terrible. He had so wanted to do a good job, and it had gone all wrong. "I guess I'll never be the tug in charge again," he said to himself.
First, my heart. Second, damn it, Northumberland, can't you ever make it back to your dock and go to sleep? Jeez! But going back to Theodore, I do feel really sorry for him. Sure, it was silly, but it was just a mistake. Could happen to anybody. So after Theodore gets off of Northumberland, he heads back to the dock, where the dispatcher has some surprising news for him.
"Tugboats," said the dispatcher. "The ship Theodore was supposed to bring in has arrived just now. I need one tug for that job." George smiled inside and out, certain that this time he would be chosen as the tug in charge. Much to Theodore's surprise, the dispatcher turned to him. "Theodore," he said, "you'll have to hurry." Theodore? Had Theodore heard right? Was the dispatcher really asking him again? But Theodore said, "Maybe you should let George be the tug in charge. I don't think I can do it." Now, Theodore always thought the dispatcher was in a hurry and gave a lot of orders. But this time, the dispatcher looked at him for a long moment. And then he said in a very gentle voice, "I would really like you to try again, Theodore. I think you can do it." "Thank you," said Theodore. Maybe I can do it." And with that, he set off once again to meet the ship.
See, that's what's great about the dispatcher. He never gives up on any of the tugs. And he can even see that Theodore is sorry for what happened, and he's even willing to give him a second chance. That's the kind of figure everybody needs in their lives. Anyway, Theodore heads out to meet the ship, but once again, starts to have doubts.
"Theodore," called Pearl, "please hurry and button on with your tow rope. We haven't got all day." Suddenly, Theodore had a terrible sinking feeling. It was the same feeling he had when he was rising up on the submarine's back. It wasn't a nice feeling either. It was the kind of feeling that said, "I can't do it." "Theodore," Pearl called again. But Theodore was already turning to go. "I can't do it," he said. I can't be the tug in charge. Theodore was worried he would fail again, just like the last time. And then a voice called out to him. I think you can do it. It was Bedford Bowie. Now, marker buoys hardly ever speak unless they have something very important to say. You did move that submarine, said Bedford, even though you thought you couldn't at first. I think you can move this ship. Should he? Could he? Maybe. Just maybe.
Aw, see, that's kind of comforting. And by the way, look, he speaks, finally!
Hail the conquering hero!
So after giving it some thought, Theodore then heads out and brings in the ship.
It was very hard work, and Theodore almost couldn't pull the ship at first. But he kept on trying. He tried, and he tried as hard as he could. It's moving, called Pearl. Theodore whistled happily to Pearl and continued all the way into the big harbor, pulling the cargo ship. Good job, Theodore, called Pearl. We're almost there. I did it, said Theodore. I am the tug in charge. Yes, it was hard work. But do you want to know a little secret? It wasn't nearly as hard as pulling that submarine.
And that concludes Theodore the Tug in Charge. This is definitely my very favorite episode of Season 2. The story is great in terms of teaching us that everyone has doubts, but with the right motivation, you can gain the confidence to accomplish anything you set your mind to. And there's really no sense bringing yourself down over a few mistakes. Again, it could happen to anyone. I actually relate to Theodore in this a tiny bit because I struggle to find confidence in myself with certain things. At least Theodore got over his doubts, and he was able to complete his task in the end. For music, all was pretty much standard, and our major cues to focus on were Theodore bringing in the mysterious thing, the sad theme after Theodore failed, and when he finally brings the ship in. And for visuals, nothing special, just had the same old harbor sets. However, I will say the biggest eye-opener in terms of visuals would probably be the scene where Theodore is on top of Northumberland. I don't know how the hell the crew managed to pull this scene off, but kudos to them. And I'm still trying to figure out, what do they really use for the tears when they ever do crying scenes for the tugs? I guess it's safe to assume maybe it's some kind of glue? I don't know. Other than that, yeah, honestly, I'd recommend this to anyone. Give this a watch. Up next is Theodore in the Middle.